So the, oh,
There it goes.
we were on a second ago and then we went off. Okay. The Newton Planning Board will hold a public meeting on Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022 at 7:02 at the Newton Town Hall. I'd like to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
For which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
So the agenda's somewhat changed a little bit, but the first item on the agenda tonight is a continuation of the applicant has requested a continuation for the 125 Development New Hampshire Corp, Plaistow, New Hampshire, for a public hearing for a 4-building condominium site plan off South Main Street in Newton, New Hampshire. The property is referenced as tax map 14, block 1, lots 27-3. Early last week, the applicant asked for a continuation of this project. So I'm not sure if there's that much to discuss. This is the same application that has been in front of us now for about 80 days. Is that about right, Jim?
it was originally submitted in April. The 65 days ran out, I believe, in July.
So, I guess.
Mr. Chair, hi, it's Annie. I have a question. Did the applicant fill up his escrow account?
Yes,
Yes, the escrow account is an additional $2,000 was deposited about approximately 2 weeks ago. We did send a letter from the Newton Planning Board to the applicant. I would say within an hour of receiving that letter, we received the check for that. So that action item has been resolved. And
Thank you.
the applicant's in good standing with the NPREA account. So I think we're just waiting on additional information from the applicant. I think they're revising their plans. I'm not going to speak on behalf of them, but it appears that the applicant would like to make a few comments.
Good evening, Tom Lagbor, on behalf of the applicant. We're just working through our zoning, which we're coming up in 2 weeks, I believe. And we have redrawn quite a bit, so we just like to have the extension, and if there's anything we need to agree to continue it, we would like to do that.
Well, not, it's obviously fully with the board's purview whether you want to do the continuance or not. The applicant has asked to continue to the 2nd September meeting because of the ZBA hearing.
Which is the 27th
yes.
of September.
For the planning board meeting,
For the
yes.
planning board, yeah.
I do need some time, especially if it's fairly major revisions. My
It's
understanding
major.
it is fairly substantial.
Yeah, it's major.
It does take some time for me to be able to review it, typically for your town engineer to be able to review it. So we do need some lead time to be able to do that. So just so the applicant's aware and the planning board's aware, you know, if I get information the day before, I'm not going to have time to be able to review it. So
I would agree to that. I'm fine with that.
And I believe that falls in line with the RSA's anyways, that if
So-
the applicant asks.
So typically, so the continuance, as long as the applicant is in agreement, you have the ability to either make a decision on the application or agree to the continuance. It's
Right.
really the applicant's protection on that. But on a new application, you at least have to have the information available 21 days before public hearing. We're already in that process, so
Right.
really for the courtesy of the public, for the courtesy for you guys to review, for me and your town engineer to review, at least 2 weeks is typically the request for changes to a plan that are already in process.
So I believe that's enough time to get everything to you, because we've been working on it for quite a while.
Okay.
Okay?
So I'll make a motion that we do a continuance until September 27th.
I'll second that.
Before we vote, can I have some clarification on how many continuances are allowed?
So there actually is no standard for how many continuances are allowed. As long as the applicant agrees, is the one requesting it, and you guys agree to it, that's letting you go beyond the 65-day clock. If you wanted to, you do have the authority to make a decision and determination this evening if you wanted to. But because you know information is coming, it is usually typical for planning boards to give a continuance request to a date certain. If it was going to be drawn out for 6 more months, 3 more months, then there might be more decisions. You have had this application for a while. These are significant changes. If they are so significant that you feel that really a new application is needed, you could deny the application, but at this point, you don't have any new information. You don't know if the application has changed. I understand that Tom is telling you, and it's anticipated, but so at the end of the day, it is your call whether you want to make a decision about the application tonight or do a continuance.
And to, I guess, follow up on Mr. Piper's question, we could at a later time, if next hearing we, and I'm going to use hypothetical, previously they presented an application with 9 buildings. In 2 weeks, we get additional material, there's 2 buildings. We could say, can we, just to make a clean break, we could say we're denying the previous application and we request the applicant submits a new application, correct?
You could deny the application based on lack of information if you feel you do not have adequate information to make that determination. Just as an example, if they did not submit a drainage calculation, which will likely need to be revised based on my understanding of what the revisions may be. If you don't have that kind of information, that might be a reason, but simply because there is a change, you can't request that they withdraw the application.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to clarify what you were questioning, it's still the same we have just pulled everything away from the 200-foot boundary to residential, where there was mechanical, some subground and septic systems. Everything has been pulled, including the road, catch basins. It'll be a full set of plans.
Okay.
All right, but no additional buildings at this time.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Can we approve a continuance with conditions?
That is, I would strongly not advise that. You can have a condition of like you need to submit the information by a certain date, but I wouldn't add conditions onto a continuance.
Just speaking publicly as a board member, I'm just a little concerned that we've been doing this for a while. I don't want to get lost and miss something.
And you, Jen, would need, you're anticipating at least 2 weeks to review this material.
I will say I will not be available the week prior. I'll be out of town that week, so in order to have it at least 5 business days that I'll be available to review it, I would need it at least the 2 weeks before the hearing.
So we can add a condition that all material must be received by Tuesday the 13th by noon.
What day is the ZBA?
You want to make it a Monday. Tuesday, there's nobody here.
What day is the zoning board meeting? Anybody know?
What was the date again?
Mr. Guide asked what day the zoning board meeting was.
The next zoning is on the 7th of September.
Wednesday the 7th. And there's going to be no change between the material that is in front of the ZBA.
The changes will be what is going to the ZBA.
Okay.
So the only reason we're changing it is trying to work with the ZBA to make this work.
So hypothetically, you could all the information to the planning board by the 7th.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be the same package, so it would make no difference,
Okay.
Okay.
right?
And you're here on the 8th, correct?
Correct.
can you
amend my,
You made your motion to continue.
right, so I'll make the motion to continue upon receipt of said documents by September 7th, so that you can view them. Is that the date you need them by?
So if it gets to me by the 8th, which is the day that Jim is here,
Yeah.
that's plenty of time for me to be able to
Okay.
review it for the 27th.
So with that date in mind, approve the continuance and the materials to be in our possession so they can be reviewed prior to that meeting. Annie, you still second?
I'll second that.
Roll, Jim, please.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Ms. White?
She
I know she was here.
does not appear to be online.
There's an iPhone that's muted that I see on the screen.
I'll try again. Ms. Collier?
Aye.
Mr. Guide?
Aye.
Mr. Marchand?
Aye.
Mr. Piper?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Dennis, can I just say one thing, just for anybody watching or that's here for this application? You did get in the mail notification if you're a direct abutter again. You will not get that again for the meeting on the 27th. You being here or the meeting minutes of this meeting are the notification of the continuance to September 27th. Just so everybody's clear about that notification process.
Thank you for that. So at this point, that ends our public meeting for this application. There are other things on the agenda.
It's recessed. You recess a public hearing that you're continuing. You don't end it.
Thank you for the clarification, Jim. I'm recessing the public hearing since there's a continuance. So I'm not ending it. But we have other items on the agenda. There is an additional item for 125 development, and then there's some board business. We recently received a request for clarification on my understanding, I'll speak for myself, is that the 125 development is in the process of potentially selling one of their buildings to the current occupant. During the transaction, or as part of the transaction, there has been some research done, and they submitted a letter to the town, I guess. Would I typically read this to the entire audience for the record, or?
Since it's not long, it might help clarify.
Sure. So we received this letter last week. It says, "Dear Mr. Moran, relative to the above, please accept the following as a supplement to the information provided to you yesterday in several emails from Coleman McDonough." So the Coleman McDonough is on behalf of 125 Development. And he reached out, basically, I summarized his email to the board. The endorsed condominium site plan has been revised at the request of the Buyer's Lender Council for Units 4, 9A Puzzle Lane. Council has requested several revisions to the declaration of condominium, a red line copy which is attached. While it is probable that the attached draft declaration will further revise pending the Buyer's Lenders Council's subsequent review, no changes will be made which will affect any provisions of the previous site plan approval decision or the revisions contained in section XXXIII condominium conversion of the Town of Newton zoning ordinance. The recorded plans are filed in the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds as plan number D43206. The revised plan differs from the recorded plans in the following regards. The correct building configuration on Unit 5 is shown on the revised plan, and the plans are attached to this letter from their council. The new easement note 10 has been added to the revised plans. The access driveway for all the units has been relabeled as private access driveway and 24-foot wide emergency access easement on the revised plans. Those were formerly labeled as common area on plan number D43206. The common boundary line and the square footage area between units 2 and 4 has been adjusted. Then there's some minor closing statements and that they're in the process of providing the documents to us. So this is not a public hearing. Our understanding, and maybe Jen, you can clarify for this, is that they're asking for guidance on how to come to the board to revise or adjust the current approved site plan that they have.
So the process is fairly straightforward in that they need an amended site plan, which under Newton's regulations can often qualify as a minor site plan revision, so it's not quite the full-blown site plan that you've had with other applications, but it does require a noticed public hearing. So they would actually have to supply, and what they've supplied as far as the plan set already covers most of what would be part of the application anyway, but it does need to be notified for abutters, and that's that 10 days has to be noticed as a public hearing on your agenda. So there is some timing aspect that has to happen, but it should be a fairly procedural, straightforward thing. They have most of the documentation, it's filling out the form and having the time available for the notification.
Okay, and to clarify, it is my understanding that this is not to construct anything new, but to generally document what is out there to date.
Effectively, yes. It shouldn't change the actual site configuration. There are a few things that have switched around, but there should be no real discernible change to what is on the ground today.
Okay. So legally, we are required to have a application submitted to the planning board. Based on your understanding, it would be a minor site plan?
It should be able to qualify as a minor site plan because of what is being proposed.
But that has to be publicly heard?
Yes.
And from there, we can then make an opinion on whether or not we can approve that?
Correct.
Okay.
So we can't move forward without having a public hearing at this point in time?
And I'm happy if 125 needs clarification on the exact procedures, what's required. They do have most of the information, what form. I'm happy to help them, or I'm sure Jim can also assist. But you guys have been through amended site plans before, so for other projects, not necessarily this one, but.
The application is on the website.
So we just need to make an application, essentially, because everything is there already. It's so you can notice abutters for a public meeting.
Correct. And, you know, just legally, there has to be a formal process for that. It has to go out to the abutters, and we do need.
So that's all you need. Is there anything else?
I guess I would say a complete and technical submission, but yes.
I mean, okay. So if we come in this week and do that, can we be heard on the next meeting? Since it's such a minor
We need ample time, so
10 days minimum.
notice abutters is your
Just gonna
problem.
say, we have to have time to do the abutter notices, the newspaper ad, we need the full site,
we need
the
full-size.
plans
It's
and what have you.
exactly how it is outlined on the
Okay.
minor site plan application. So we just
Okay.
can't, we need the time to notify all the abutters and everything
Right.
else. And
So what are we looking at for a timeline?
So you need to apply by September 1st to be on the September 27th meeting agenda for this
We
application.
couldn't get on any earlier? Or there's this skip?
No, just the timing wise, you would have had to have applied by the 18th to be able to be on the next planning board meeting in
Okay,
September.
because that gives you the 30 days to notice?
It gives you the 10 days, but you have to submit an application at least 21 days before,
Okay,
so
okay, just want to make sure I don't miss anything.
September 1st is the day you need to get stuff in by.
Okay, makes sense. If anything else that you can think of that,
One thing, if I might suggest, the abutter list needs to be pulled no more than 5 days before it's submitted. We're getting a lot of people because they're reusing an abutter list that's quite old. People have sold properties and changed. I'm now getting 15, 20 abutter notices back as
Okay.
being undeliverable.
Okay.
Not that they've been refused, but
Does it, basically,
Yeah, I know.
what Jim's trying to say is
Right.
that
I
you can't use
understand.
an old one, even
Right.
though
Yeah.
95% of
Right.
the applicant or the abutters may be the same.
Right.
It's the concern that there's been a transaction in the property, one person
Right,
has
yeah,
not
a
been
lot of sales in
notified.
town, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and actually the statute, some of the webinars I've been doing lately, the statute states that you pull the abutter list has to be no more than 5 days old on the application.
Okay,
Got it.
thank you for the clarification.
So on the minor site plan, it'll show everything what they're asking for, correct? What's getting changed over?
That was kind of my statement about the complete and technically complete application. I would hope so.
So within section 10 of the Newton's Policy and Procedures Manual for the Planning Board, that's just sort of a reference in your site plan regulations. It has the full list of what is required for a minor site plan.
Okay.
And if you need help finding that, I'm happy to send an
Well,
email with those
I
references.
just want to make sure so that
Right.
you didn't come here and then
No,
something wasn't
I know
done.
that. I want to expedite this because I'd like to get this done for Will.
Right.
Mr. Turner, because interest rates are climbing.
Yep,
And this is just a bit of a hiccup. The plans are there, are already revised, that you already have. So this should be a fairly quick thing just to get it to a public meeting. I don't see any, a new butters list, I guess. That's the work in it, but,
Page 2 of the application is found online, lists those items as being able to be verified.
And my understanding is that this needs to be recorded, correct?
that's the issue. That's the issue. There was a couple of things there that wasn't right on it, and we had corrected it, and Mr. Phil Perry has corrected the verbiage. And, it's like legal,
Yeah, but my comment to that is just to try to avoid, and I know you've been through this
yeah.
a number of times, the registry.
Right.
Just make sure that the documents and the drawings meet their requirements.
Yeah, he's listening, sitting right there, so he's gonna write them, so I think we're good, so. It's,
So that-
like I said, they're so small things, so.
okay,
It's already, I mean, technically, it's already done. I mean, we're paying taxes on it already,
right.
right?
Yeah, like I said, I just want to make sure that you're able to come in and not,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I appreciate it.
They did submit copies
Chair.
of new,
This is Barbara, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Barbara. Are you under iPhone, just so we know?
I'm on my iPad right now. I just wanted to ask you a question. Can the applicant let us know what's going on with the landscape plan, whether that's been completed or not from the original plan?
The landscaping, we just ordered the last of the trees. I actually have a receipt of them. That needs to be planted, and it will be completed. It's just this amount of time that we have, now to get this public meeting in. I will leave you with receipts for that.
Okay.
To prove that they're on order. And
Thank
they
you.
should be here this week, I believe, and we'll install them instantly because we're past the hot weather,
Okay, that's
if that makes sense, right?
great to
Yeah.
hear. So there's a potential that we could even have photos of all this installed prior
We'll
to.
resolve it. The only thing we're gonna be asked for is a waiver on the guardrail. We installed all the boulders, but we can't get the guardrail still.
Okay.
And that's happened a couple times before with us.
So that would be helpful for your proposed or pending
Right,
hearing to
right.
get some of those boxes checked off, just so we have it. It's easier for us to make a decision.
Okay,
Thank you for that, Barbara.
all right. Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
new condo docs were supplied.
Okay.
However, I can't submit them to council until the NPREA deposit exists.
Okay, so one does not exist. We can't have that money deposited unless there's an application in front of us.
Right. So I can't submit them because If they decide not to put in the application, we've got a legal bill.
And we cannot get those reviewed until we take jurisdiction of the application.
Right.
If you know that you're going, because it's a condominium, you know you're going to want that to, you could have that reviewed when the application is filed. The same way you have me review things. You don't grant permission for me to review it.
Okay.
So if that's something you know is, you're going to want to have reviewed, you may as well authorize Jim to just send them to town council once the formal application and the NPREA are supplied.
Okay.
There's no reason to hang that up for that purpose.
Did you catch all that? Yeah. Perfect.
Hello, my name's Coleman McDonough. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. On comment to Jim's comment, we just brought $2,000 up for a deposit in the NPREA account.
That's two separate applications. And we can't, unfortunately, I understand what you're getting at, Mr. McDonough, but we can't take money from that or that account for another separate application.
Okay.
Although I do understand it is all your money, but it's the way
Okay.
the accounting works, they're two separate accounts.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So I don't think, is there any other clarifications we need?
Nope.
Perfect. So next on the agenda, we have acceptance of the minutes from the August 9th meeting.
This is
Not sure.
Annie. I move to accept.
This is Barbara, I'll second.
Jim, did you catch that?
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Collier?
Aye.
Mr. Guide?
Aye.
Mr. Marshon?
Aye.
Mr. Piper?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Next, we have approval of the NPREA Manifest for the,
Dennis?
so- do you,
There's a lot of people
Yeah.
that I think were here for earlier, and well,
Yeah.
it would be great for
We'll
people
get a
to
lot of
stay.
business.
If we're wanting to exit, it would be very loud for a few minutes.
I was trying to get this like
I know.
real quick.
I have
Yeah,
a
I
few things to
saw.
talk to you about, so.
We'll get him next week. We'll be down to get Jamie Fitzpatrick off my left.
All right, thank you.
You could see a few people
Thanks for
itching
coming.
to.
We'll see you the 27th. We'll see you the 27th. Yep. Yep. Thanks for coming. We'll see you the 27th.
I wish I knew what you were here for. We never got any details of what this was about tonight.
You'll be getting something in the mail. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night.
Sorry, I didn't mean to clear out the room. It just seemed like.
No, it's totally fine. So it's approval of the NPREA Manifest for $126.12.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who was the second?
Mr. Piper?
Thank you. Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Collier?
Aye.
Mr. Guide?
Aye.
Mr. Marshon?
Aye.
Mr. Piper?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
And last, with the exception of what Ms. Rowden added, our budget for next year. So Jim provided us, I believe, a nice little spreadsheet of a proposed budget for next year.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I think we want a few discussion things, topics.
Well, I'll second.
No,
it.
that-
We can
that-
still discuss it.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, could I just ask you a question?
Yes, Barbara.
is it lower because the selectmen have asked us to diminish the budget again?
It's higher.
I think it is increased by,
1,375.
yeah,
Oh, okay,
13.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong number, sorry about that.
And actually, Ms. Rowden reminded me tonight that next year, starting in July, the hourly rate for the circuit rider will be increasing, which I did not work into here, so we need to add approximately $500 to that line. The circuit rider contract, instead of being a prepaid, it's now going to be billed on actual monthly usage. And there is money in the budget, you know, we could take money out of consultant services or what have you if people would rather do it that way, until we have a year of experience to look at and actually decide for it in next year's budget.
Okay. And just, I guess to summarize, we still have some public here. It looks like to date, we're running under budget, correct?
Yeah, we normally do run under budget because of the consultant services and the legal line.
Can you guys give me an example of what you've used consultant services for?
So right now you guys are using it for the land use master plan chapter. That's something that you use for consultant services. Often it's zoning ordinances, master plan work, or on occasion a special study.
Okay.
And can we use that money to apply for like the grants that we discussed a few weeks ago?
Yes, you could use that as the local match, certainly. The grants we discussed, and I can get into this a little more in a few minutes, those do not require a match. Most grants do. As far as master plan work, you might get a chapter for a master plan with $5,000. Typically, they, depending on the topic, can run more than that. It kind of depends on what the scope of work is. But it also allows, if there was a really big zoning ordinance overhaul, I do think that that's going to become a consideration with some of your land use chapter items when we get to it. And if we apply for the housing grants to look at your housing master plan chapter, you may have some potentially large zoning ordinances, or at least ones that require a lot of public outreach and engagement coming down the pike. But we won't really know that until we get there. But those sometimes are used for those consultant services.
Some of that money will also probably need to be used to pay for probably the circuit rider to actually do the grant writing. The planning board should look into a workforce housing zoning ordinance. That can be covered by the money that the state received. However, it may cost $300 to $400 worth of the circuit rider time to write the grant. So that would come out of here rather than coming directly out of the...
So I will say, just for that particular grant and any grant application I might help the town write, that comes out of the dues that you already paid the RPC as a town to be members of the Regional Planning Commission. They do not come out of your circuit rider fees, which I use for your planning board meetings, zoning ordinances, and then plan reviews that actually get charged back to the applicant for the larger ones.
Even better.
So it's essentially free to the planning board.
It is not an additional cost to the town of Newton.
That's a
How's
much
that?
better way of putting it. Thank you for the clarification.
Trying to get you guys money by leveraging a little bit of your money.
Right.
So it's out of the dues and subscription line item that we're already paying.
Yes.
Perfect. And just so we're all on the same page, Jim, you're proposing a 2.8% increase in our operating budget. I did the math when we were sitting here.
Is that with the 500 that he just said?
That's without the 500, so I can redo it. It's about 3%.
I really don't need you to. It was fine.
I will admit that I represent the bulk of that increase simply because I now have 2 years worth of my time in that office, and I just had to extrapolate it out. I actually have a chart where I keep track of the weekly time usage and what have you. We thought after COVID that things would taper off a little. They haven't. And I actually built into there the possibility that I could get a pay increase this year. But that's why you see that large number next to my salary line.
Okay.
Question. How many hours a week on average are you using, or is it monthly that you calculate it?
It works on a monthly cycle. The average is 27 and a half hours. Some weeks actually hit 30, some weeks 25. But it's rare for it to really go that much below.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, like Jim said, this has been an exceptional year. We've had quite a lot of business put before the board.
Our standard until COVID was to have 6 to 7 applications per year. The one that is continuing, I believe, is number 18 for this year.
Yeah.
If I get the one that was discussed this evening, plus the one I worked with earlier today on the telephone with another applicant, you're at 20. Last year there were 23. I have a strange feeling this year you're going to exceed last year. Still able to be done. I'm fairly efficient at what I do, but I was just told that, someplace I've got another 150 certified abutter notices to prep. Things like that are what take, there's just no way around it.
Yeah, just because of the amount of abutters for the applications that are coming in front of you.
Right. And I will actually stop those this coming weekend because after a while your eyes just sort of cross them.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair, this is Annie.
Yes, Annie.
A lot of these expenses that are in the planning board budget actually get reimbursed, but they go into the town general operating fund. Is that correct? So from the town standpoint, there really probably is not much net cost. From the whole town standpoint, how much is, what's the net? What's our net?
I can't answer that question right now. Maybe Jim can.
I have been arguing with the corner office downstairs that the application fees that we take in should be shown as being applied directly to the cost of, however, those checks are made out to the town of Newton, they go into the general fund. They do show up in the town report on a line, but it is nowhere near the expenses for the planning board.
So
this year
we spent $25,000 so far this year, we may have $2,500 sitting in it on that line item. Is basically
no,
what you're saying.
I'm guessing it's probably closer to 4,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
The
that's
majority of
because-
it's from him.
But
However, there's no place that it actually shows up on the same page as expenses,
In and out.
income, total actual
there's no
cost.
balance on the end, so we can
Right.
kind of say, maybe we should increase our fees, maybe we shouldn't, or have any justification for this number.
That is something that I've actually been trying to phrase out so that application fees should be based on the number of abutters, because literally the application I was working on this was for a home-based business. I looked, they have 6 abutters. That's going to take me an hour to do.
So I have a question. A lot of communities I work in, I have to provide the town, planning board, conservation commission, mailing proof for every abutter. Can we revise, is that not allowed in New Hampshire? Okay.
The town can require the mailing labels, you can do all of the, make them do as much work as possible. The town has to mail it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe New Hampshire should revise that regulation.
And this is the reason that I was trying to come up with a way of working it. That home-based business is going to take probably 3-4 hours of my time, period, from start to finish. The application that you for the amended site plan tonight, the abutter notices alone are going to take between 40 and 45 hours. Just because it's 150, put 3 labels on, put this label, I mean, it's a whole process, and I do it very expensive. I do it have a very good process for it. But there's just no way around the fact that you can do 10 to 12 per hour.
Would it be possible to require, and I understand we'd have to change some of our requirements, but would it be possible to require an applicant to give the planning board the prepared mailing with all items in envelopes, labels attached, everything else, so all Jim has to do is double check it and go to the mailbox?
Doesn't it have a notice from the town? Doesn't it have town documentation in there?
So one of the reasons you can't, a pitfall of doing that is that if the applicant drops it off, 2 days before the next planning board meeting, and that's the date that it says on it, well, then that can't go out. So it's making sure that the appropriate amount of time has lapsed.
Yeah.
One thing that the town is actually not responsible for is ensuring that the abutter notification is correct. So Jim doesn't have to go and look up at the tax assessor to ensure that everybody's been identified in the list. That responsibility is actually on the applicant, which is why the 5 days before you submit the application, you have to get the correct list.
Sure.
And actually, this is just from the NHMA. I am not allowed to take a name off of that list or put a name onto that list, even if I know something is incorrect, because that's the part of the submission. The only thing I can do is if there is and that particular applicant lists people, when he lists people in Plaistow, there are addresses that will say MasterCard of Greenwood Estates. That's not a legal address. So I don't waste anybody's money putting that in. But after the meeting, I'll show everybody what the envelopes look like, and I try to make them up as quickly as possible. But there's just, the amount of time that goes into one. Because I'm looking at a bunch of people and I'm going, most people up here have probably never had to assemble a certified mailing.
So from what I heard Jen say, the only reason an applicant couldn't put together and prepare the mailing and just drop off the mailing totally ready would be if there's a mistake on the date. Can we have a procedure where that's the applicant's responsibility also to make sure that they have their dates correct and are in compliance as a part of having a complete application?
So Annie, I will say there might be some other pitfalls pitfalls and obstacles I'm just not aware of. I'd be happy to look into it to see if that is a possibility, though.
I think it would be great to look into.
Excuse me, this is Barbara. Can I make a comment? Okay. I think that if you leave some of those kinds of things up to the applicant, you're going to open yourself up for a lot of problems, because if they don't get it if they don't get it mailed out in time, so the abutters get it in the time frame that is required by the RSAs, when everybody comes to the meeting and somebody will later on, or even at that meeting, says, well, you know, my neighbor told me about this and I never got notification, that just throws it out again for the next meeting, and another butter list comes out. I think we're better off letting Jim do his job and making sure that everything goes out in the time frame so it's received when it's supposed to be.
Not to mention, you would have to go through every envelope.
Well, first of all, the envelopes would have to come unsealed,
Right.
and I would actually have to put in the abutter notice, because that's an official town document. However, if you remember, we had an application last fall that ended up being continued and continued and continued for 3 times, because the first time they went to open, wanted to take jurisdiction, somebody stood up in the audience and went, I'm from Plaistow, I never received a butter notice. They had to continue the public hearing. They got me a new set of labels. And then I spotted some names that were missing from Newton, because they had missed all of Howard Lane and the people that were abutters across 108.
So I guess I literally, I shouldn't say the wonderful admin at my office today did 390 abutters for a large project in Massachusetts. The city gives us the form, we write the lot and block number, and it's a document, and she spent the last 2 days pulling all these together. And if we screw up, I go in front of the Conservation Commission in New Bedford, I get to go back there in 2 weeks, and my client just yells at me. And it like takes all the conservation agents like, you screwed up, Dennis, come back.
I would love this. By the way, I misspoke earlier. It's about 20 hours worth of work, not 40.
I know she has hundreds of green
Yeah.
rip-offs from, I feel bad.
Yeah.
And I understand what you mean, Barbara. It's a pain because we go, yep, you didn't complete your application. It's not technically complete. See you in 2 weeks. And not that I want to make this the applicant's problem every time, but that's kind of why you don't have to make exceptions, I guess. It's just like, yeah, you didn't do it.
And that is why I suggest, I'm trying to come up with a way to suggest so that if you have 20 or less abutters, it's the fees that we have. And then once your abutter number goes up, it contributes, because technically the application fee is supposed to cover my time in the office working on this application. The $250 application fee that's going to come with the amended site plan.
It doesn't cover your costs.
So let me ask you, Jim, what's the process to do that?
To increase that, I actually started to make a little
Proposal?
because we presently have it for the application fee. If you're doing a subdivision, the first 3 lots are X number of dollars. Between 3 and 10 lots, it's a different fee. And if it's more than 10 lots, it's a third fee.
Right. So when you do that, then you will see it, then we approve it. Now, does it have to get approved somewhere else?
No.
All right, then I would suggest that's probably about the easiest way to go.
Put something together.
And,
put it
yeah,
forward.
and then that way there, things aren't constantly coming back, because it's gonna end up being like what we've dealt with as far as selectmen. When things don't get taken care of, pretty soon, like Jim talked about, these continuances that we deal with, pretty soon we could end up with 10, 11 people on a continuance that are trying to get in on one meeting, because things aren't filled out, things aren't done appropriately, and I'd rather not sit here for 10 hours a night for a meeting to do that. I think something that's not broken doesn't need to be fixed, but we need to adjust the credit and debit so that the town's not forking over that kind of money. So I think Jim's on the right path by wanting to increase said funds, and we should just probably roll with that.
Jen, legally, can we charge per abutter?
Yeah, plenty of towns do. I've got a few towns that'll charge.
That might be
However, that you cannot charge for the time.
Right, you
No,
can't
no, no.
charge the
You
time,
don't-
but
you
you
can-
can charge for
What I'm
the.
thinking is you try to figure out a number to charge per abutter. So then you get the application, he's got 6, it's a flat, this is the charge per abutter. Do you see what I'm saying? This guy's got 150. It's $10.
So to help sort of get at the, so you have to charge for approximately what the notification is. Like you can charge for that, that's not a
Sure.
problem. Some towns will have, different fees for minor versus major site plan. You already have that.
Which is fine.
There are some towns that will do a base fee for minor or major, and then will do by the number of lots, or it's $100 per 1,000 square feet. So it's a way to help the abutter cost is the same for, whatever the number of butters times the abutter cost. That's what they charge. But then they try to recoup some of the time, and it's never gonna be all of Jim's time.
Sure.
Right.
The problem when you start getting into, at least the argument, is that your application fees can, in some cases, get really big really fast.
But you can ask for a waiver, correct?
Technically, you could ask for a waiver. Rarely, other than, someone resubmitting the exact same application they've submitted before, are boards willing to grant that, because you don't want to just be giving away application fees because it's a cost. There are a few different methods for, arranging how much your application fees are to try to make them as fair to the small projects as to the big projects. Bigger projects cost more money.
Right.
I'd be happy to give some suggestions for what other towns do that you guys could consider.
I think that
Might be
would be
something to
helpful.
go over in a future meeting to try to figure it all out.
And that falls in line with one of those new RSAs that we just came down from the state too, that we have to make all these fees able to be posted so that everybody can. I know we do generally.
I was just going to say, that's the one thing the
Right.
minute it came in, I went, oh, good, we're already covered.
Right.
Because
So what we can do is just take these, adjust them, and put the new ones
Right.
in. But that would be my suggestion, is just to go that way. Like you said, we're not gonna try to recoup like every cent, but the differential from what we just talked about, 25,000 to 4,000, that needs to be closed a bit. That's ridiculous. So,
Mr.
I
Chair?
mean, if we can close that a bit, that would be great.
Yes, Barbara?
I have a sort of a monkey wrench that might get thrown in us talking about trying to recoup for the.
No, thank you.
Butters, because it's coming out of the budget, is the fact that if we're going to increase the fee based on the number of butters, and mostly this is for smaller applications, not like light industrial park that has, and they have a big need for a.
I can't hear it anymore.
Barbara, we just lost you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That's much
You
better.
got me? Okay, sorry about it. I think I have my hand over the microphone. I think that there's going to be a problem trying to recoup the fees unless the selectman's office allows the amount of money that we're asking for over the hang on a minute, let me get my mouth to work right here, I'm sorry. Okay, unless the selectman allows some of that money that's coming in for those extra fees to go into the planning board budget, the planning board is still expending the money to mail out those abutters lists, and then the money for the application still goes into the general fund and not back into the planning board budget to cover it.
I see what you
Does that
mean.
make sense?
Well, not necessarily, Barbara, because the money's going into the general fund, so every year when we do our budget, at least the money's coming back to the town.
That's not. Jim the money has to come out of some place to go mail those abutter lists, that butter notices at $6.50 a piece or $6.75 or whatever they are now.
I
So
think
we
what
can
Barbara's
increase-
saying
we can
is
increase
the,
the fee, but he still has to go and pay for them at the post office, and it's coming out of our budget.
yeah, your budget might still look the same,
Right.
but the money that's coming back into the town could increase.
Right.
It won't change the bottom line of what your budget number
Our
is.
budgets,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
isn't going to change what Barbara's saying.
Right.
But
Right,
the larger pot of money will help.
right, that's what I'm saying. It'll come back to the town, so it'll be put into the general fund. So it's the same thing. We'll see what we got, but at least there's not that huge discrepancy that's not coming back to the town.
And we're paid, or
Right.
our operating expenses are covered out of the general fund, correct?
Exactly. Well, from the budget when it's done, yeah. So
If
it's
you
all set.
want, before I present this, once it's been adopted, I normally do the presentation to the Board of Selectmen. I can find out what the income we've generated and make sure I stress that. I mean, quite frankly, I kept the increase as minimal as possible.
I think the increase, given the current cost of everything in the world, I think we
Is
did
going
a
up,
very
right.
good
Right.
job at
But
that.
as part of my presentation to the Board of Selectmen, I can actually say, and out of this $48,750 it costs this year, we have generated income of X number of dollars, which represents X percent of the bottom line of the budget.
That would be helpful.
And it would be perfect timing because budget season's coming up in another month.
Okay, so we have a motion to,
Do you want to withdraw
To
that?
adopt, there's a motion by Mr. Marshall
No,
to adopt
we
the
want
budget.
to approve the budget
We're gonna,
because Jim already said we're going to roll because it's only half a year. So we'll be able to take that money out of the, what is it, the...
Consultant services, most likely.
Yes.
okay, so you don't want us to increase that?
No,
No, it is going up, however,
I guess my
well,
point
we're
is...
lucky we have a really good circuit rider, and you're lucky, I'm not doing my own horn. I don't call Jen unless it's really important. So I try to, I'm going to do what I can to keep that cost down.
right.
I
for the
guess what I meant
consultant.
was then take consultant services and put it at 45 and add 500 to the other line.
I agree with that.
That's what I meant. Not necessarily increasing the budget $500. I'm saying take it from consultant services, knock it down to 45, and add 500 to the circuit rider contract. That's all. That's what I meant.
That works.
Huh?
That
So
works.
that means the circuit rider would go up to $13,310, and the consultant services would go down to $4,500.
Correct. I mean, I second, so if you're good with it,
So we'll make the motion with the amendment.
I'm still good with it.
So, Mr. Marshall moved to adopt the 2023 Planning Board budget as amended. Mr. Guide seconded the motion. Want me to call the roll?
sure.
Mr. Mr. Moran,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Ms. Collier,
Aye.
Mr. Guide,
Aye.
Mr. Marshall,
Aye.
Mr. Piper.
Aye.
And then last, although it's not on the agenda, Ms. Rowden had some.
Yeah, I wanted to do a quick follow-up with some of the grants for housing, zoning and planning amendments that has come out through the state that we talked about at the last meeting. What RPC is working on, and this is in line with what I had talked with you guys about, is we're identifying which of our towns may want to do some master plan work, which is something that I think is perfect for Newton. The phase 2 of what grants are available are for doing an audit of your zoning to see what opportunities or impediments are there to increase housing supply. And the third item is really, are there major zoning overhauls that you may want to consider that can go forward? Those have a rolling application date, so the planning and zoning, the master plan one is due technically by November. You have to apply. The audit you would have to do by June, and then the major zoning you would have to do by November 2023 as far as applying for the funds. We can apply all at once, but the thing that seems to be working for most towns, and I think would fit Newton, would be to apply for doing the master plan work and then be working on the planning and zoning, the zoning audit of where are the opportunities, where are the constraints, as sort of those being the two tasks that we would work on, because they can occur at the same time, and then see where we shake out in a couple of months to then, if it looks like there is major zoning amendment work that could be done as an outcome of some of that work, we'll have a better idea of what that might look like and would provide a stronger application. So holding off on that component, we're going to be keeping track of how much funding is left in this whole big pot of money, so that we're able to see, if the funds are really starting to run out, we'll try to get applications in faster. I don't think it's going to be quite that fast, but it's good to get applications for doing a master plan chapter for you guys, which you've already done your outreach, you've done your vision for your survey, so this would be doing more refined housing chapter items, and then doing the audit at sort of the concurrent time, so that we would work on what are some of the goals in the housing chapter to maybe help to be informed by what the audit says about what the barriers or opportunities to housing you have in your zoning.
So sorry,
I was going to ask what that means as far as the process. I assume, my understanding from our last meeting is that Jen can help with a lot of that. What are the steps to get the
So the steps are that I can draft the grant application on behalf of Newton. Newton does actually have to submit it, so I would need an approval of the application from you guys, and I can bring that for the next meeting, so that if you agree with it, you can say, yep, we agree, you'd write a letter, and then I would work with Jen to help to have him actually submit it on behalf of Newton.
Sure.
That as part of that, you identify what consultant you would use, and because I'm helping you write the grant, that is presumed that you would choose RPC. That's I guess the one caveat to me writing the grant application. It is kind of the given in this case. And then process, Annie, is that my understanding is they are trying to award those funds within about 2 to 3 weeks, which is very fast for grant funding. Within 2 to 3 weeks, so that you can start on that process. The RPC's Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is the big regional data for how many housing units we have, how many we're going to need, how many need to be affordable, is coming out in December. So we can start to have some conversations. We will not be able to be completed by the end of the year because that report informs a lot of what a master plan is going to say. We'll start to do refinement for Newton. We can do some of the mapping and some of the initial conversations. The audit of the regulations probably would not start until about the end of 2022. So that would probably take 3 months or so to do the audit, the master plan chapter, maybe about 6 months. So really by March, April, maybe May of next year, we should be able to do the audit and a master plan chapter. You're not beholden to that time frame, but that seems to be about the right pace for most towns, and you could apply about at the end of that time frame for any major zoning that you'd want to do for the following town meeting, because major zoning overhauls, you need to start having drafting and conversations and outreach really in about the June, July, August timeframe to be able to then to do the outreach in the fall, to then get it approved and on the warrant and hopefully passed in March.
And zoning changes, and I think we kind of touched upon this last meeting, was previously Newton allowed accessory dwelling units attached, and a zoning change would be a detached.
That would be a very, I'll say, low-hanging fruit to be able to do. It could be increasing the ability for someone to have maybe 2 accessory dwellings. That's actually a provision that's allowed in the state law. Maybe it's with certain lot sizes or certain areas of town. Maybe there are areas of town you only have a limited area that duplexes are explicitly allowed. Maybe expanding that, maybe expanding where you may allow more compact cluster subdivisions, or actually having someplace that instead of just the 55 plus, you're actually encouraging like more cottage development. So I'm going to say the word tiny home, but really very small houses that are closer together with a shared
1,500
septic.
square feet shared septic.
Yeah.
Very similar to 55
Right, generally,
without the age restriction.
generally
Effectively.
2-bedroom homes.
Sometimes, yes.
One
To
or
actually
two, yeah.
qualify as workforce housing, you have to at least have 50% of the dwellings be at least 2 bedrooms. That's a
Right.
requirement for workforce
Yeah.
housing, for federal reasons and the tax breaks that you can get.
So part of that, when you said about putting it on the warrant, you're talking about the warrant for this coming year?
No, any
The year
any,
after?
Yeah, any major
All right, yeah,
zoning.
because I was going to say, because anything to get on the warrant, like you said, we would have to have the public hearing, and according to what I
Yep.
saw for this year, it would have to be, we would have to have the town input by like January, have to have a follow-up the beginning of February, so that it would end up being able to be put out as a warrant.
So, I mean, something we could do this year as a low-hanging fruit, if we wanted to talk about allowing detached accessory dwellings, that's a fairly easy ordinance change. You know, you still have to have we have to have the draft language, we have to have the public hearing in sort of that November-ish time frame. You might have to have a second one in December or early January for the planning board to be able to vote to move it to the warrant in March.
Can we just do that like today if we wanted?
Could we work on the language today?
Yeah, if we decide as a board that's something we want.
Yep, if you guys wanted to do, that is a relatively minor zoning change. That's something I can do under your circuit rider contract. That's something we could work on this fall if you guys have interest in doing that. That's fairly easy. You know, other things are getting rid of minimum dwelling size. It just kind of, it eliminates one less thing that people have to worry about. Maybe they want to do a very small detached ADU or a bunch of tiny homes for, you know, single folks. There's a variety of things that you can do. They're not all what is dubbed workforce housing, which is actually fairly expensive housing still. It is not poor housing. It is not Section 8 or 9 housing. A house can be a $425,000 house. Rent can be up to, I think it's $1,700 for a 2-bedroom in this area. It's not low income. It's for firefighters, teachers, young professionals, older people. But you can increase housing opportunities for a variety of housing. It does not just have to be workforce aimed.
Okay, I was just generally asking, not that I've seen anybody request, at least my time on the board, nobody's come here and asked for a variance or a waiver for a detached unit.
In Newton, you cannot do a detached accessory dwelling unless you go to Superior Court because it's a conditional use permit.
Okay, so that's like a hurdle that most
No
people
one does
here.
that unless they're very wealthy, to be honest.
Which is what we went through with somebody on Highland when they had the attached garage and they made it for his in-laws. John Sylvia, was it? I think.
But that was an attached unit.
If it's attached, it's,
Right,
it
that's
just
what I'm
goes through a
saying. He was
conditional
able to do it because it was attached. He wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't.
use. Correct. If it was like in an existing barn,
Right,
you wouldn't be able to do that
right.
Unless you-
Without having this,
without going to Superior
Right.
Court because you use a conditional use permit.
exactly.
Some towns' accessory dwellings are permitted by right, they have a few parameters, and you just get a building permit.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can do that aren't major changes, but they can increase it and decrease hurdles, so.
Jim, have you heard of anybody coming in and asking about?
We have actually, there are people that have come, and I know the properties, and I said, no, your 3-car garage that is on the opposite side of your driveway cannot be converted into, it's not permitted.
Right.
And I explained to them that, the board can go through the entire process, but they can't give you the permit. You then could take it to court. However, I can't guess on what. And usually that's the point at which I tell people you need to seek competent legal advice.
Okay. I was just wondering if maybe it's something we as a board want to say, let's just move forward with that anyways, because there's a lot of interest in town, and we're, 95% of the people, it's just a resident that wants to bring their in-laws.
I would say that it's less than one a year.
Okay.
The state is adamant with this workhouse forcing too, and like what Jen was talking about, it's not for the poor. It's actually based, if you look at it and what it says, it's based on what region that we're in, based on the salaries and their income to what they're able to be charged for their rent for a certain amount of years before that rent then could increase when it would no longer, quote unquote, be basically workhouse.
Workforce.
And there are other stipulations, like there can be no age restriction
Right,
on workforce housing.
exactly.
Yeah, I will say
Hence with the no kids being able to have the 2 bedrooms or more, so it should be for a family.
I will say with the Invest New Hampshire is the umbrella program. Invest New Hampshire's aim is to increase housing. Those are the strings that are attached to the money. It doesn't mean that if I do this audit of your zoning that you have to adopt every single possibility. It does not mean that, but it does mean that with the application and the town, you're putting in a good faith effort to see what can we do. And it can still fit Newton. I mean, I would hope that would be the aim, to fit what Newton would like to be. But it does not mean you have to put up, 300 unit apartment buildings, which is what has happened in a few of your
And
not
part
so
of it
far
is
neighbor
already
towns.
covered by the village district zoning, which allows multiple mixed use. And quite frankly, there are 4 zones in town.
Yeah.
Covering probably 100 lots, and not a single person from any of those zones, with the exception of the home-based business that came in last year. That was the first time somebody had a property in a village district zone that wanted to actually utilize, but those are actually the areas also where we have some of the non-noticeable multifamily dwellings, because it still looks like an old Victorian house. Unless you live next door, you don't know that there's actually 3 apartments in that building. One of the good things I will have to say is that if the grant money is received, it's not a burden even on the town treasurer, because the money is awarded to the town but kept on the books of, is it Plan New Hampshire?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the admin, the project admin
Right.
for that can
So,
pay actually
the
whatever
bill-
the consultant is
The
directly.
bill comes in from RPC, if we're using RPC as our consultant. When the bill comes in, it goes to Plan New Hampshire, who pays
Pays it, right.
on the town's behalf.
So the short to my stick is I'm going to work up a scope of work for you guys to look at, assuming that you're good with it. We'll ask for a vote so we can have a letter of support written, and then we can work on applying.
Yep.
Sounds good.
And I got one thing that I just need to, for our CIP committee, that the selectmen are looking to see if they can get their hands on the CIP as far as the town properties and whatever we need to invest in, so that when we do the budget this year, that hopefully we can budget some money towards these said projects that need to be addressed and taken care of, so that when it's given to us, we'll see the importance of what needs to be done in order of what was submitted.
So along that line, Bob, the last time the master plan committee, subcommittee met, one of the things we discussed and we also brought to the planning board just as a summary at the last meeting was that it is our hope that as the selectmen are doing, because you selectmen have offered very much to help us because we have no authority to, we have no authority to require anybody to submit capital improvement plans and to give the detail. One of the things that we're very hopeful of is that when the selectmen meet with the different departments, with each department, that they review and ask questions and get the priorities for the 5-year capital improvement plan for each department, with how much money, where it's coming from, what the urgency is, and what their probable timing is. And members of the master plan committee would like to be present to be able to ask questions too. But you guys have the authority to require that. We don't.
Right, yeah, but that's what they're looking to get that in their possession, a copy of all of them that you received, put in order to what, so that we can look at it and address it, we can all sit and talk about it. But
there are a lot more. I'm just telling you, there is a lot of gaps in what was received. There are a lot of gaps, GAPS, gaps of information in what was received. And we need the selectmen to help us by requiring each department to fill those gaps with specific information that fills out those items so that you can use it. Right now, what we've got is not useful for you. It's just very general. Could you hear that?
I have a hard time hearing you with these speakers.
What Annie was saying, that the information, so the master plan committee went out to the various boards, committees, departments, thank you,
Right.
and said, I need your budget, your plan, your long-term plan, tell us what you need, and she got 20% of what she needs. There was missing information, so they weren't able to formulate anything or use that information to move it forward.
Mark has a rough Excel sheet that I'll ask him to send to you.
So what Annie's requesting is that the Board of Selectmen /hold the departments accountable of get this information to us / the planning board, or the master planning committee. Because the master planning committee, they don't have any teeth to enforce that. I'm not sure how much more authority the Board of Selectmen has, unfortunately, but you can try a little bit harder.
They're the boss. They have the authority.
I know that we get the fire department put in, the road agent put in, Mike put in all his, Mike Pravero. I put in for the town hall and whatever, and an estimate and the importance of that. Something was put in for the library. I know it was kind of vague for the transfer station. He had put down some stuff, but...
Bob, it is vague in general. I know that some stuff was put in. There's some things that were done well. There are more that were not. There are a lot of gaps. For instance, in the road agent's list, he has a whole lot of roads mentioned without a date, without cost, without estimates of urgency, and without sources of funding. That's just one example. That's not to say that Mike did a bad job. His job was typical. We need the selectmen to help enforce it and to enforce the requirement in order for them to have a budget that they get their capital improvement plan done and into you as a part of the budget process.
All right, well, nothing was said, as far as I know, was sent to the selectmen saying that.
You know, the capital improvement plan.
Yeah, so I guess in the interest of people's time, this is for the capital improvement plan.
Yes.
That's more in front of the Board of Selectmen than the planning board, right?
No, capital improvement plans are intended to be for about a 6-year period so that the needs of the town, in this case, you know, new fire truck, new town hall, roads being paved, are being met that are in, not conformance, but are in step with what the master plan is for the town, but also related to try and, the goal is really to stabilize the tax rate so that you are not having a new fire station, a new town hall, and having all of your roads paved in the same year. To do that, you do need information like what's the priority, like do all of the roads need to be paved this year, or can just half of them be paved? So it is related to the budget process, very much so, but it's the annual budget process, how that plays out with the longer term budgetary process, which is the CIP. And CIPs are for capital investments, not for personnel, not for, you know, the new laptop. If you needed 100 new laptops, that is a capital expense. So it's not just select board, it is actually planning board, select board, and really the whole town.
Sure,
I know
but-
that's a very complicated answer
Right.
to it.
The planning board actually sets the committee for the CIP. And it's the planning board who actually makes the mandates about the people for the CIP, how long it runs. If they need a replacement, it's the planning board that can and is supposed to approve people to that. The people that are on the CIP, there can be no more than 3 people from the planning board on it, whether it's a standard. There has to be at least one person, and the chairperson of that has to be a regular member of the planning board to be able to run it. And then the other 2 can be either an alternate or another member. So you can't have more than 3, but there's a lot that the planning board does that, but it's the selectmen that just like approves the process of it going forward. So there's the interconnection between the 2.
Yeah, just to be clear, the capital improvement program does not have to get approved by the select board.
No.
The budget does, and you
Right.
should certainly look at the capital improvement plan as you're doing your annual budget considerations, which is, you know, having the CIP committee at the budget hearings, I think is phenomenal. It helps all of that to jive, but they need to put together a capital improvement plan. They need a certain level of detail from the departments about what the needs are, what's the estimated cost. Sometimes you'll have really detailed estimates, sometimes you will not. You know, does it have to happen this year? Can it wait a few years? Can the fire truck wait 2 years, or is it falling apart? How many cruisers do you need for the police? So, I mean, I don't know how much information has been received, but based on what Annie just gave the example of with the road agent, you need more detail about at least, you know, how many miles are you intending to pave per year and what's the cost of that?
Sure. So Jen, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What do most other towns use to fund their capital improvement plan?
Things that are put into the capital improvement plan vary quite a bit. Sometimes it is, you know, a warrant article on a year by year. That's how I'm going to use
Recurring warrant article.
So I'm going to use roads as an example because it's a fairly easy example. Some towns will budget $300,000 a year for road paving. And then ideally your road agent or public works has a plan of like, okay, these are the roads I'm going to use this year.
Sure.
Other towns for roads will put paving in their road agent budget.
Yep.
Sometimes if it's something like a new fire station that's going to cost $20 million, you might start doing a capital reserve fund, which is you might start putting in $2 million a year. And then when you have enough money, or when you know about when it's going to come due, you've already put money away in the bank for the new fire station. Sometimes grants can be used as capital improvement expenses. So maybe there's a grant for the new roof for the library or for the trail. So you're identifying the source of where that funding is going to come from, or possibly the mechanism that is going to be used to help get that funding.
So I guess what I meant was, usually there's a warrant article that says $250,000 of the capital improvement plan if that money's left over.
No. So the capital improvement plan.
All right, maybe it's not that, but it's a capital deposit. I'm trying to word it right. I can't remember what it's like on the warrants, but it's worded in a way
you're
that...
thinking of a capital reserve fund. That's what you're thinking of.
If X is left over, then if this was voted on and approved for, let's just say 250,000, they end up with 500,000, and it was voted on and approved, they can deposit that money into that account.
Yes.
He's referring to the unexpended fund balance at the end of the
Okay.
year.
Okay.
But
Yes.
that warrant has to be on the warrant article has to be there
Yes.
for that to happen.
Correct.
Yes.
And then you can build that money up to do those capital improvements as well.
Correct.
Okay.
That is one mechanism to pay for the projects or needs in your
I'm
capital.
not saying for paving roads, I'm saying for capital improvements.
Yeah,
Which is
for,
one, but
for paying for your capital expenses. Your capital improvement program is just a plan.
just an outline. That's all it
an
is.
Excel
I
spreadsheet.
get it. Doesn't have to happen. It's just a plan.
Yes, and you
Helps
look
you
at it annually
prioritize.
to shift priorities
Yep.
as they come up.
And that's the importance of having it, so that you can see what's needed, so that you can figure out where you can draw these funds, whether it's a grant, whether you need to do the warrant articles to put the money aside for it, to be able to pay for it if it's going to be too much money, so you're not hitting the taxpayer like Jen said.
I agree. I'm just saying that I've seen it in other towns
yeah.
that they have it on there every year.
Yeah,
Right.
there are lots of towns that never have to put in a warrant article for $100,000 for whatever.
Sure.
Because they are constantly saving for that new thing. They never take out a bond.
Sure.
Because for 20 years they've been saving.
But that's what I mean, right? So if you have that warrant in there every year, it's rolling,
Yep.
then you start to build up money and you're able to do this stuff.
Yes, they typically have to be for a specific purpose. That's the only, so you might have a couple, like the new fire station, the new town hall, and the roads.
Okay, so,
And then-
Mr. Chair, I hear that Mr. Marchand say that the selectmen haven't received anything from the planning board asking for help. So what I'd like to ask is that the planning board, based on the report that was given at our last meeting to the planning board from the subcommittee, that the planning board ask the selectmen to require each department as a part of their budget application process to give a detailed CIP proposal. Can we do that? That's my motion.
I'm processing what you said, Annie, sorry. So you're asking that the planning board request from the Board of Selectmen a requirement to the various departments that when they are providing the budget to the Board of Selectmen, that information is provided to the CIP?
No, I was asking that they flesh out, they require the information to be fleshed out for the CIP with what, when, urgency, and source of funding.
I understand your ask. I'm not sure how the Board of Selectmen can enforce it. I mean, other than reiterating,
Get us this information.
yeah,
mean-
get us this information, that's,
I mean, ultimately, the select board is the legislative body of the town and thus is the administrator of the town and the departments. You guys are the boss at the end of the day.
So that's what I'm asking, is that they be the boss.
All right, well, how about you send me what you got for now, so I can take a look at that and then see what's lacking. Because I know when I sat with Diane, I had the police chief there, I had Mike there, and Mike put in different amounts and what was gonna be needed for things. Along with the police chief, I know the fire chief put in for the different equipment, and he also put in prices for his equipment. So I'm kind of a little bit of loss here myself, trying to understand where they weren't so specific with some of the needs that you're looking for.
Right, it's
That's my problem.
to clarify, Annie, just so we're not playing like telephone through different boards and departments, is I understand you're asking for more information. I generally, I'm making assumptions in my head of what you're getting. They probably think it's what you're asking for, but it's not what you need. And I'm wondering if there could be like an actual working session of you get in the room with, I'll say, the road agent, and be like, please this is what I'm asking you. Or maybe it's easier if you provide a spreadsheet of what you're looking for, or a form. That way you have?
We have, it has not been used.
Okay.
We need help from the selectmen. We are suggesting
They should
that
go
the
to the
budget
selectmen's
process is a good time to do it.
So I did just forward an email to the secretary for the selectmen that has that Excel file. So hopefully they can disseminate to you guys and go from there.
All right,
So the selectmen have it, we'll have it.
They will.
They can look at it, and if they want more information, it's on
yeah,
them.
then at least I can see what's going on.
Sure.
Because or we, as the selectmen, haven't seen anything or even heard anything about this up until this point.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I had no idea. I thought this, because I sat with those people and talked and had things submitted according to that sheet that was given to me, that I had Diane give to each department head to put down what it was, which was the equipment, the importance, like the fire chief, for example, it sticks out in my head. He put each piece of equipment, and it said within the next 1 to 3 years, depending on which piece of equipment it was.
Sure.
He put a rough price on how much it was gonna cost. So, I mean, by doing so within 1 to 3 years, that would give an estimated how important and when it would need to be replaced, what the cost of it was going to be. And then we, again, would have to see, would we need to put that in a warrant article, how much it's gonna be, or whatever.
Is it possible that some of this information just simply has not been given to the master plan committee?
Yeah, because I was just going to say, I haven't seen any of that.
We sent it directly to Mark.
Okay.
Mark received it right from Diane. She emailed it right to Mark.
Was that like in the last week, or?
No, this was well over a month ago. I had that day when I sat down in the selectman's office, Diane forwarded that paperwork to Mark with all that information from those department heads, the fire department, the highway department, the police department.
And maybe Mark has it, maybe he doesn't. He's unfortunately not here, but maybe it would be beneficial of just marking it up and be like, just a couple bullet points of what would make it more usable for you guys. I have no idea what was submitted, but
None of us do.
I know the budget season's coming up. Maybe it would be good if what was submitted could be sent to the whole planning board so you guys can make an informed
sure.
motion.
That would be helpful, I think.
Sure.
That way we're not guessing and...
Guess we'll talk about it next time we meet then. Since
mean,
we
you-
don't see anything and this is like a two-way conversation.
Because I
So,
don't think you have much for your next agenda, since especially the two things that were tonight won't be on until at least the 27th.
Oh, that's gonna be a long night.
So there's no meeting until the 27th?
No, you just don't have a lot on your upcoming meeting agenda, so this might be a discussion, I guess is my, you have the opportunity to talk about it.
I think that would be helpful. That way we're all on the same page and I'm not guessing what, so if Diane / Bob could send the planning board that information that's been forwarded to the master planning committee, and we could go from there. And then we could make a motion potentially.
I was just going to look at Mr. Marchand because his secretary went on vacation today
Yeah.
for 3 weeks.
Perfect.
If you look on the your shared drive, the selectman shared drive, which I don't have access to, if the files are there, you can download them and send them to me, and I will disseminate them and make sure that, Annie and everybody gets them.
Or,
I'm sending it to you right now.
I was looking and saying, like, he has it.
perfect.
We don't need to do that.
I know if Diane had them to send out, they're someplace on her cloud server. And if you want, Thursday, I will speak with Kim to see if Kim has access to that while Diane is away.
I think Jordan's, he just sent them to you.
Yeah?
I already got them.
I just
They've
felt
already
my
been
phone
sent, Jim.
buzz.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He just did it. Magic.
Yeah.
Some government doesn't have to be inefficient.
Okay, so I'm just looking at,
It's a rough Excel file, gives,
Did you include me on that?
I sent it to plan board members. Does that mean you get it?
No.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
So, all right, that's, cemetery says nothing.
It's all right, I didn't get it either.
So there are a couple that either didn't respond or they responded saying,
Right.
we have no needs. So don't assume if it's not there, they didn't say anything.
Sure.
So maybe rec committee too didn't need anything, is that correct, Annie? Does that sound right?
Right, and if you tap,
I don't remember, Jordan, specifically each one.
well, according to the cemetery, Annie, what was posted in the other CIP said that they were running out of land. However, and I'm gonna draw a blank with his name.
Mr. Landry?
Yes, Mr. Landry said that they have plenty of room in the cemetery, that there is no need to purchase more land. So that's why he's saying at this point, there is no need for any monies or any need for anything for the cemetery. That they're all set with the money that they're getting to take care of business as is. That's why he put in nothing for that.
Bob, just so you know, this is not about,
I'm losing her and I can't hear what
can't hear
she's
her either.
saying.
She just
Cut out.
froze.
Her image is frozen.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, may I just make a quick thing?
Absolutely.
I have been working this past week on this colors pack.
Annie, unfortunately you cut out and we didn't hear anything you said.
can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, so what I was saying is that for Mr. Marchand, he's done a fabulous job with this. This is not a criticism in any way or criticism of any of the department.
She keeps freezing.
Selectmen's- What?
The last thing we heard was criticism of any departments, and then you.
There's no criticism here. This is stating a need to flesh out the information in the CIP. And we need the selectmen's help to do so, and we suggest that the budget process is a good time to get that information. Did you hear that?
I did. So Annie's suggesting that the budgeting time is the time to flesh out all this information. Now, what is the easiest way for you to get that information? Is it the Board of Selectmen requesting from each department head a one-on-one meeting with the capital or the committee? Is that the easiest way of getting each person in the room for half an hour? And having the Board of Selectmen request or enforce or require that from the department head? Or is it, I mean, some of these, like, it's a committee, it's a recreation committee. The Board of Selectmen can ask, and they could say, we don't have time. I don't think they will, I'm just, they as a committee could decide to not agree with the Board of Selectmen's request. You know, it's easier for the fire chief, the police chief, etc., but other things, yes, Jim?
I was just going to suggest the selectmen actually have the teeth in town, because the committees that would be submitting for the CIP are not the planning board, they're not the ZBA, it's not the Conservation Commission. Well, actually, Conservation might have something that they'd like to do. However, other than the ZBA and the planning board, they're under the selectmen can actually look at them and go, this is the schedule from the CIP committee. You are meeting, somebody from your department needs to meet with them on Monday evening at 5:15 to 5:45, because the rest of those people that are giving information to the CIP are town employees.
Right, I think that's the easy part, but the other committees.
There are no other committees that have CIP in,
Okay.
because it's remember, this is all capital. So it's the fire department, the police department, the roads, the health, the health officer maybe, it could be welfare.
Excuse me for 1 minute.
But those all fall under the authority of the Board of Selectmen. So I wish this had happened in 2016. Actually, we tried, but it didn't go anywhere. Only the selectmen can look at the fire chief and go, you will meet with the CIP committee. Only the selectmen can look at the police department and say, somebody from there will meet with the CIP. So it is, without the selectmen's backing, the CIP ends up stagnating.
Okay.
I'm getting off of my soapbox.
So the CIP
Okay,
needs to
can
go.
you hear me? Can you hear me? I just changed a plug.
We can.
Okay. What Jim just said is entirely accurate. That's exactly what it is about, and thank you, Jim. That's exactly what we're trying to do, and the selectmen have told us that they're absolutely willing to help. We're telling the planning board, and we did at their last meeting, and we're telling you again that we need the planning board to ask the selectmen to continue to give that help, and we're suggesting that the budget process is a good time to do it, because they're going to be meeting with those departments about money at that time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
When does the budget when does the budget process with the select board actually start? I'm guessing because Diane is away on vacation, it doesn't start for at least 3 weeks.
I hope so.
Your next meeting is within those 3 weeks. You've gotten some more information. I think you have time to digest it and figure out what you might think.
We'll discuss it next meeting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And in the meantime, Bob, if you could relay Annie's concerns or request that we would like that the Board of Selectmen request or require each department head to meet with this committee to
Well, yeah, can set up a date and a time, and we'll put it out there, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, if you guys are available, we could start in the afternoon or whatever.
We need to have the chair of the master plan committee to, work with us on, to work on that time and on that communication. So Mr. LeBoy will have to be the one to do it. I'm just saying it as a member of the committee. I'm not chair, so.
Okay, so we can, hopefully Mark is back on the 9th. Is that when our next meeting is? 8th? Sorry.
Yeah. Mr. Lavoy did say he would be back for the next meeting.
Okay. So we will,
It's the 13th.
13th. Okay.
Yes.
The week after Labor Day. Discuss it
Okay,
then.
thank you. And I know you couldn't hear me before, but I want to make sure that Mr. Marchand worked really hard on this whole CIP that we have so far, and a lot of the departments and everything did part of the job. It isn't like there's been nothing done. I want to make sure that this doesn't come across as a criticism. What I'm trying to express is that there's a need, not that there's been nothing, but that there's a need to flesh it out. So I want to make sure that that's clear. This is not being critical, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Do we have anything else to discuss, Jim?
I just want to let people know, after the couple of webinars and the course I just took, I have been working to rewrite the rules of procedure for the planning board to bring it into compliance with all the changes due to House Bill 1661. And we'll be sending out a sort of a red line draft probably in the next 4 or 5 days for people to look at to see if there are any things that they see that I possibly have missed. I have a fairly extensive list. And at the same time, I'm correcting typos and what have you in the document from beginning to end.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I have nothing else. Anybody else?
Make a motion to close?
Sure. Thank you.
Amen.
The chair can just declare it rather
Good
than
night, everybody. Thank you.